Picture this. A mother picks up the phone and hears the words, "No parent ever wants to hear. Your daughter's been shot in the head, thrown in a trunk, and they're gone." Just like that, 18-year-old Samantha Guthrie vanished into thin air. But here's where it gets crazy. When police rushed to the house where this supposedly happened, they found nothing. No blood, no body, no evidence of any crime at all. So, was this all just a sick prank? Or had someone gone to extraordinary lengths to cover up one of the most brutal murders this city had seen in years? Stay with me, because what happens next is going to blow your mind. November 2018. Akron, Ohio. It's a cold evening when Joni rushes into the police station, her hands shaking, her voice barely holding together. She needs to file a missing persons report for her daughter. Now, normally, when an 18-year-old goes missing for a day, cops don't panic. Young adults take off all the time. They go to parties, they crash at friends' places, they forget to call home. But Joni isn't reporting a typical runaway situation. She's reporting a murder. The officer behind the desk looks up from his paperwork, suddenly very interested. Joni explains that yesterday she got a phone call from someone she didn't even know, a stranger. And this stranger told her that her daughter Samantha had been shot in the head and thrown in the trunk of a car. The officer leans forward. Okay, so where did this supposedly happen? 375. Lillian Street, Joni says. It's an abandoned house. The officer nods slowly. He knows that house. It's scheduled to be boarded up in just a few days. It's in a rough part of town, and it's been empty for months. Drug users and squatters have been using it as a hangout spot. But here's the thing. Officers already went to that house. They searched it top to bottom after the phone call came in, and they found absolutely nothing. No blood, no signs of struggle, nothing that would indicate a violent crime had taken place there. The officer looks at Joni sympathetically. "Ma'am, I think someone might be playing a prank on you." But Joni isn't convinced. She knows her daughter. Samantha had just turned 18 and immediately left home. She'd fallen in with a bad crowd, started using drugs, and began frequenting these abandoned houses around town. Joni had watched her daughter slip further and further away from the family, becoming more distant, more troubled. And now, she's just gone. Before Joni leaves the station, she gives the officer one more critical piece of information. The person Samantha was last seen with, a man named Danny Hamby. Write that name down because it's about to become very important. The officer takes the report, files it, and publishes a missing persons bulletin with Samantha's description, including a distinctive butterfly tattoo on her right arm. And then, that evening, something incredible happens. A man walks into the police station claiming he knows exactly what happened to Samantha. His name is John Marshall, and he says he was actually at the house on Lillian Street the night everything went down. He saw it all with his own 2 eyes. Now here's where you need to pay attention, because what Marshall is about to tell police sounds almost too detailed, too perfect to be true. The detectives are skeptical. Who is this guy? Why should they trust him? So as Marshall gives his statement, the cops are fact-checking everything he says in real time. Every detail, every name, every timeline. They're going to verify it all because if this guy is telling the truth, they've got a murder on their hands. If he's lying, they've just wasted precious time on a wild goose chase. Marshall starts from the beginning. Samantha had been trying to get a ride to the house on Lillian Street for hours that night. Marshall didn't feel like driving anymore, so he didn't pick her up. But a few hours later, she showed up anyway. How? Her dad had paid for an Uber. Now this is easy to verify. Detectives talk to Samantha's father, and boom, he confirms it. he did pay for an Uber that night. First point for Marshall's credibility. Marshall continues. He was walking to a convenience store when he saw Samantha and another person named Yoshi heading toward the house. About 30 to 45 minutes after Marshall got back to the house, someone knocked on the back door. It was Danny. But Danny wasn't alone. He had Tony with him, his girlfriend, and another man. A black guy Marshall didn't recognize. Someone named William. Marshall let them in. They went upstairs to talk to some people who were already there. People named Jody, Kim, and Kate. Samantha was up there too. Tony and William stayed downstairs. Now think about what Marshall just did. He just gave police the names of 6 potential witnesses or suspects. 6 people who were at that house. If Marshall is making this up, he's doing an incredibly elaborate job of it. But if he's telling the truth, this case just went from 0 leads to almost too many to handle. The detective leans forward. Okay, so everyone's at the house. What happens next? Marshall takes a breath. Music was playing upstairs. Then Samantha came down looking distressed, panicked even. Marshall told her to leave, to go out the back door. But instead, Samantha went to the basement. 2 or 3 minutes later, there was some kind of commotion. Samantha came back upstairs with blood on her face, either a bloody nose or a busted lip. She went back upstairs to where the others were. Danny and Tony followed her. And then, 5 to 10 minutes later, Samantha came running down the stairs. Danny was right behind her. And by the time she got to the 4th or 5th stair from the bottom, Danny shot her in the back of the head. Let that sink in. Shot her in the back of the head while she was running away. Marshall watched it happen. He describes hearing the gunshot, seeing Samantha fall to the ground. The house erupted into chaos. William and Yoshi started ordering everyone around. They helped carry Samantha's body outside to a vehicle. The detective asks the question everyone wants answered. Is Samantha alive? Marshall pauses. She was making noises, he says. But from his experience, it sounded like a death gargle. Her body was shutting down. She was still technically breathing, but she'd been shot in the back of the head from 8 to 10 inches away with a Smith & Wesson MP40. If she didn't get to a hospital immediately, she wasn't going to make it. And based on what Marshall saw, nobody seemed interested in getting her medical help. Now remember, police have already searched this house once and found nothing. But Marshall's story is so detailed, so specific, that they decide to go back. If they find even a single piece of evidence, a bullet casing, a drop of blood, it means Marshall is telling the truth, and Samantha is almost certainly dead. If they find nothing, Marshall might be wasting their time, or worse, involved in something more sinister himself. The police pull up to the abandoned house on Lillian Street. It's dark, decrepit, and honestly looks like something out of a horror movie. They draw their weapons and clear the building room by room. This isn't just about finding evidence. This is about making sure nobody's hiding inside waiting to ambush them. The place is a maze of debris, graffiti, and trash. Multiple rooms, multiple hiding spots. After several tense minutes, they determine the house is empty. Now they can actually investigate. But here's the problem. The house is a complete mess. There's garbage everywhere, broken furniture, old clothes, drug paraphernalia. Finding evidence of a crime scene that's been cleaned up is going to be nearly impossible. Nearly, but not completely. Because Marshall told them 2 crucial things. First, exactly where Samantha was shot. And second, that William and Yoshi came back to clean up the scene. They know what they're looking for and where to look. The officers scan the walls near the staircase where Marshall said Samantha was shot. At first, nothing stands out, but then one officer spots something. A mark on the wall just below a crack. It's small, easy to miss, but it's not graffiti. It's blood. Samantha's blood. Once they spot that first stain, everything else starts to fall into place. More blood spatters on the walls that hadn't been fully cleaned. Bullet casings on the floor that matched the ammunition used by a Smith & Wesson MP40. Marshall was telling the truth. This was a murder scene. Danny and Tony are now wanted for murder, and police have 4 other witnesses they can track down to build their case. But here's where things get really disturbing. Just days after Samantha's murder, one of those witnesses, a girl named Kimberly, shows up at a stranger's house begging to be let inside. She's being chased by people with guns. The homeowners call the police immediately. When officers arrive, Kimberly is terrified, barely able to form coherent sentences. The cops bring her outside to their patrol car to talk. She describes being chased by multiple men. 1 black, several white, all armed. She's from out of town, just visiting a friend. And where was she visiting? Lillian Street. The friend she was visiting? Jody, one of the people who was at the house the night Samantha was murdered. The cops realize what's happening. Kimberly is being targeted because she's a witness. Whoever killed Samantha is now hunting down everyone who was at that house. This case just became a race against time. If they don't find Danny and Tony fast, more people could end up dead. And that's when they get the call they've been waiting for. A man reports that Danny and Tony pulled a gun on him inside a house, and that they're now in the parking lot outside bragging about killing someone just days earlier. Police rush to the scene. This is their chance to catch the killers before anyone else gets hurt. Multiple patrol cars surround the parking lot. Officers approach the vehicle with their guns drawn. Step out of the car. Step out of the car right now. Hands up. A man and a woman comply. It's Danny and Tony. The officers pat them down, and immediately they start finding things. Danny has needles in his pocket. Tony has a loaded gun on her. They're both arrested on the spot and taken back to the station for interrogation. Now, this is where things get interesting because Danny knows exactly what he's doing. He's been in the system before, 23 years in and out of trouble. He knows how interrogations work, and he's not about to make the detectives' jobs easy. The detective sits across from Danny and reads him his Miranda rights. Danny immediately asks for a lawyer. "I don't know what this is about," Danny says, "but I want my attorney." The detective tries to build rapport, tries to get Danny talking about anything. But Danny isn't budging. "I've got 11 numbers in the system, 23 years, Danny says coldly. "I'm not saying anything without my attorney present. Nobody else sitting here. I've got nothing to say." Danny's strategy is clear. Stall. Make the detectives work for every single piece of information. He's not going to confess. He's not going to slip up. So the detectives switch their focus to Tony. Maybe she'll be more cooperative. Tony is brought into the interrogation room, and the approach is completely different. The detectives treat her not as a murderer, but as a witness. Someone who might have been along for the ride, someone who might not have known what was going to happen. They show her a picture of Samantha and ask if she's ever seen this girl before. Tony barely glances at it. "Never seen her in my life," she says. The detective leans forward. "Tony, we've been investigating this all day. We've talked to multiple witnesses who were at the house. They've told us everything. They've told us you were there. They've told us you and this girl got into an argument. And that's what started all of this." Tony shakes her head. "I don't know that girl. I've never been to that house. I don't know what you're talking about." The detective tries a different angle. He asks about her kids. She has 2 boys. "What would you do if one of your boys went missing?" Tony's face softens. "I'd do everything I could to find him." "Exactly," the detective says. "That's what this girl's family is trying to do. And we have witnesses who say you were there when something bad happened to her. Don't you want to help? Tony's expression hardens again. I wasn't there. I don't know anything. She's not giving anything up. She thinks she can just deny everything and walk away. But the detectives have an ace up their sleeve. They show Tony another photo. This time it's a picture of Yoshi, whose real name is Dylan. Do you know this person? Tony barely looks at the photo. No idea who that is. The detective smiles. That's interesting, because we spent all day with him. We got to know him really well. And guess what? He's not as tough as you think. While Tony is denying everything, Dylan is in another interrogation room. And what's happening in there is unlike anything you've ever seen. Dylan is 19 years old. He's barely out of high school. And when the detective starts asking him questions about Samantha, Dylan doesn't deflect or lawyer up. He breaks down. Completely. The detective notices Dylan is on the verge of tears, his face buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking. What did you see? The detective asks gently. Dylan can't even speak. His entire body is trembling. The detective presses further. If this was your sister, your family member, what would you want someone to do? What if someone had information that could help bring her home? Dylan's voice cracks. She's dead, isn't she? The detective nods slowly. We think so, and we need your help. Dylan breaks. The tears start flowing, and he can barely get the words out. He tells the detective that he'd been hanging out with Samantha just days before her death. They talked about life, listened to music together. He felt a connection with her. They were the same age, had similar struggles. He thought maybe they could be friends. And then he watched her die. Dylan describes the whole thing. Samantha came back to the house with Tony. They started arguing. Tony either slapped Samantha or grabbed her face. Samantha tried to run downstairs. Danny followed her. And then the gunshot. Dylan had to carry her body to the car because Danny still had the gun, and everyone was terrified. They loaded Samantha into the vehicle, and then Danny, Tony, and William drove off with her body while Dylan stayed behind to clean up. He moved furniture, burned the blood-soaked carpet in a fire pit outside. Everything Dylan says matches the evidence perfectly. The burned carpet remnants were found in the fire pit. The missing carpet and drywall at the bottom of the stairs, exactly where Dylan said Samantha was shot. But there's still one critical question. Where's Samantha's body? Dylan doesn't know. He wasn't in the car when they dumped her. For that answer, detectives turn to William. William is cooperative from the start. He explains that Danny forced him to get in the car and help dispose of the body. But here's the problem. Danny made William lay down in the back seat so he wouldn't see where they were going. William couldn't see any street signs, any landmarks, anything that would help police find the body. But he does remember some details. They drove for a while, maybe 20 or 30 minutes. The area got more rural. He remembers seeing a lot of tall trees, bright fall colors, orange and red leaves everywhere. They pulled off onto a small 2-lane road that wasn't well marked. There was a fenced-off area nearby. That's where they dumped Samantha's body. Not buried, just left her there in the dirt. It's not much to go on, but it's something. Detectives start searching rural areas outside of Akron that match William's description. 2-lane roads, wooded areas, places with fencing. And then, a few days later, an officer thinks he might know a spot. They send a patrol car to check it out. The officer drives down a small, unmarked road surrounded by trees. The fall foliage is thick, bright colors everywhere. He spots a fenced area and pulls over. He walks a short distance into the woods. And there she is, Samantha Guthrie, lying in the dirt. Not even buried. Just discarded like trash. The officer calls it in, and within minutes the scene is swarmed with investigators. They identify her by the butterfly tattoo on her right arm, the same tattoo her mother mentioned when she first reported her missing. Samantha is finally found, but she's not coming home alive. Her family will never get to see her smile again, never get to hear her laugh, never get a chance to help her turn her life around. She was 18 years old. Her whole life was ahead of her, and it was all taken away over something so pointless, so trivial, that it makes you wonder how any of this even happened. Why? Why did Danny shoot her? What could possibly justify this? The answer is nothing. According to witnesses, Samantha and Tony got into a small argument. That's it. No major conflict, no deep-seated grudge. Just a petty disagreement between two people who barely knew each other. And Danny decided that was enough to end Samantha's life. Now comes the question of justice. What happens to the people involved? William, who helped dispose of the body, is charged with abuse of a corpse and tampering with evidence. He gets 10 years. Some might say that's too harsh for someone who was forced at gunpoint to participate. Others might say he should have refused, should have gone to the police immediately. Either way, he's paying the price. Dylan, the 19-year-old who broke down in tears during his interrogation, faces a tough decision from the court. On one hand, he helped clean up a murder scene and dispose of evidence. On the other hand, he's clearly remorseful, clearly never wanted any of this to happen. He was just a kid who fell in with the wrong crowd. The court decides to give him a second chance. He's charged with tampering and obstruction, but instead of prison time, he gets 5 years of probation. The hope is that he can get his life back on track, that he won't end up like the others. Tony, who many believe instigated the whole thing by arguing with Samantha, is convicted of tampering with evidence and obstruction of justice. She gets 16 years, not as much as some people think she deserves, but significant nonetheless. She'll spend a substantial portion of her life behind bars for her role in this senseless killing. And then there's Danny, the man who pulled the trigger, the man who shot an 18-year-old girl in the back of the head while she was running away. Danny is convicted of murder and abuse of a corpse. He's sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 24 years. That means when Samantha would have been 42 years old, Danny might get a chance to walk free. Some people find that unacceptable. Others believe in the possibility of rehabilitation. But one thing is certain. Samantha will never get a second chance. So what do we take away from this? What's the lesson here? Maybe it's about the dangers of falling in with the wrong crowd. Samantha left home at 18, started using drugs, started hanging around people who didn't have her best interests at heart. And it cost her everything. Maybe it's about the importance of witnesses coming forward. John Marshall could have stayed silent. He didn't have to walk into that police station and give a statement. But he did. And because of that, Samantha's killers were brought to justice. Dylan could have refused to cooperate during his interrogation. He could have lawyered up like Danny did. But he didn't. His testimony helped seal the case. Or maybe the lesson is simpler than that. Maybe it's just a reminder of how fragile life is, how quickly everything can change, how a single moment of anger, a single bad decision, can destroy multiple lives forever. Samantha Guthrie was 18 years old. She had struggles, sure. She was using drugs, hanging around abandoned houses, distancing herself from her family. But she was also someone's daughter, someone's friend. She was a human being with hopes and dreams and the potential to turn things around. And she was killed over nothing. An argument, a bruised ego, a moment of rage. That's all it took. Think about that the next time you're angry at someone, the next time you feel yourself losing control, because the consequences of violence don't just affect the victim. They ripple outward, touching everyone connected to that person. Samantha's mother will never be the same. Her father will carry that guilt forever, wondering if paying for that Uber was the decision that sealed her fate. Her friends will remember her not as she was in life, but as she was in death. And the people involved in her murder? Their lives are over too. William is in prison. Dylan is on probation, forever marked by what he witnessed. Tony will spend the next 16 years behind bars. And Danny will likely die in prison, his life defined by a single, irreversible act of violence. Nobody wins in this story. Nobody walks away unscathed. It's just loss, tragedy, waste. So here's what I want you to do. Take a moment to think about the people in your life who might be struggling. The friends or family members who are going down a dark path, who are making bad decisions, who are surrounding themselves with dangerous people. Reach out to them. Let them know you care. Let them know there's a way back. Because maybe, just maybe, you can help prevent the next tragedy. Maybe you can be the difference between someone ending up like Samantha and someone getting their life back on track. And if you've made it this far, if you've listened to this entire story, do me a favor. Leave a comment below telling me what you think about this case. Do you think the sentences were fair? Do you think Dylan deserved a second chance? Should Tony have gotten more time? I want to hear your thoughts. And if you found this story as compelling as I did, hit that like button and subscribe, because I cover cases like this all the time. Real crimes, real investigations, real people whose lives were changed forever. Thank you for watching. And remember, life is precious. Don't take it for granted. Don't let anger control you. And always, always look out for the people you care about, because you never know when it might be too late.